In the annals of Westeros, there are names that echo like thunder, names that burn across centuries, spoken with awe, fear, and reverence. Among them, none shine brighter nor darker than House Targaryen. Forged in fire, bound by dragons, theirs is a legacy of triumph and tragedy. Today, we tell their story, the rise, the glory, and the ruin of the Dragon Lords of Westeros. Welcome, lords and ladies, to the history of House Targaryen. They were not of Westeros. Their roots lay far across the sea, in the fabled land of Valyria. For thousands of years, Valyria was the heart of a mighty empire, an empire built on blood, sorcery, and above all, dragons. With their scaled beasts, the Valyrians carved dominion over much of the known world. Armies burned before them, kingdoms bowed, and cities turned to ash. The Targaryens were but one among the many noble houses of Valyria, not the most powerful, nor the richest. Yet fate had marked them. Where their kin sought glory in the freehold's endless wars, the Targaryens looked westward, to a lonely island standing against the waves of the narrow sea, Dragonstone. It was a prophecy, it is said, that drew them there. Daenerys the Dreamer, daughter of Lord Aegon Targaryen, foresaw the doom, the cataclysm that would engulf Valyria in fire and death. Heeding his daughter's vision, Aegon abandoned the splendor of Valyria, sailing his house, his people, and his dragons to Westeros. Many called him a fool. Yet when the doom came, raining destruction upon Valyria and shattering its empire in a single day, House Targaryen endured. Alone of the Dragon Lords, they had survived. On Dragonstone they ruled, isolated yet powerful, with their dragons sleeping in the volcano's warm heart. For more than a century, the Targaryens bided their time, watching the seven kingdoms of Westeros tear each other apart in endless war. Kings rose and fell. Oaths were sworn and broken. And still, the Dragon Lords waited. Then came Aegon, who would be called the Conqueror. With his sisters Visenya and Rhaenys at his side, and with their dragons Balerion, Vhagar, and Meraxes, he looked upon the fractured land of Westeros and saw a kingdom waiting to be forged. In the year 02 BC, Aegon Targaryen set foot upon the shores of Westeros. He did not come as a guest, nor as a raider. He came as a conqueror. The lords of the seven kingdoms laughed at him. They had their swords, their spears, their armies of thousands. What was one man with two sisters and a handful of followers? But they had not reckoned with dragons. At Harrenhal, the mighty fortress of Harren the Black, Aegon unleashed Balerion the Black Dread. The castle's great towers, thought unassailable, melted like wax as dragonfire swept over them. Men screamed, stone cracked, and Harren himself was burned alive within his own walls. From that day, all knew. No castle could stand against the dragon. One by one, the kingdoms fell. The Storm King, proud Argilac, was slain in battle. The Reach and the Rock bent the knee after their armies burned on the field of fire, where tens of thousands perished beneath dragonflame. Only Dorne defied him, retreating to the sands and striking from the shadows where dragons could not easily follow. Yet even their defiance could not undo what Aegon had wrought. In just 2 years, the seven kingdoms became one. From the Iron Islands to the Vale, from the frozen north to the golden fields of the Reach, all bowed to the Iron Throne. The great seat forged from the swords of Aegon's vanquished foes, fused together by dragonfire. Thus began the Targaryen dynasty. For nearly 3 centuries, they ruled the realm of men. Their dragons were the pillars of their power, symbols of might and terror unmatched. Kings and queens came and went, some wise, some cruel, but all bearing the blood of the dragon. Visenya, stern and unyielding, birthed the line that would give rise to Maegor the Cruel, a tyrant whose reign stained the throne with blood. Rhaenys, gentle and beloved, gave her line to Aenys, a king ill-suited for the burdens of rule. Yet through war and strife, through rebellion and betrayal, the Targaryens endured. They built King's Landing upon the mouth of the Blackwater Rush, a city of sprawl and splendor. Crowned by the Red Keep, they founded traditions and laws, binding together the lords of the realm beneath their dragon shadow. And always, above the city, the Iron Throne loomed a grim reminder of conquest, a seat meant not for comfort, but for command. But even dragons cannot burn forever. The Targaryen dynasty stood as the unshakable pillar of Westeros, its kings enthroned by fire and blood. Yet from the very heart of that dynasty came its greatest peril. For the seeds of ruin are sown not by strangers, but by kin. And no tale makes this truth clearer than the dance of the dragons. It began with King Viserys I. His reign was long and for the most part peaceful. He loved feasts, tournaments, and the company of his court more than war. But his greatest burden was not ruling the realm. It was naming his heir. For Viserys had a daughter, Rhaenyra. Proud, strong, and ambitious, she was the blood of the dragon through and through. In his heart, the king wished her to succeed him. And so he named her his heir, declaring before the lords of the realm that Rhaenyra would sit the Iron Throne. For years, she was styled the realm's delight. But time changes all things. Viserys remarried. His new queen, Alicent Hightower, bore him sons. And though Viserys never revoked his proclamation, whispers spread. Why should the realm suffer a woman upon the throne when there were princes of pure Targaryen blood? In the Red Keep's halls, factions grew. One side rallied to Rhaenyra, the princess of Dragonstone. The other to Alicent and her eldest son, Aegon. At feasts, the court wore colors: blacks for Rhaenyra, greens for Alicent. And though the king tried to keep peace, the realm itself was dividing. When Viserys at last died, the dam burst. Even before his body was cold, the Greens moved swiftly. In secret, they placed a crown upon Aegon's head, naming him Aegon, the second of his name. Rhaenyra on Dragonstone raged at the betrayal. With her husband, Prince Daemon, she gathered her allies. The Blacks would not yield. Thus began the dance of the dragons. Brother fought sister. Dragon fought dragon. The skies of Westeros burned. Rhaenyra's Blacks struck first, seizing Harrenhal and threatening King's Landing. Yet the Greens were not idle. They commanded powerful houses, and their dragons were many. In the Riverlands, at the Battle of the Gullet, fire rained down upon fleets, burning ships to cinders. In the Reach, men clashed on fields already scorched by dragonflame. But no battle was more savage than that of Rook's Rest. There, Rhaenyra's champion, Ser Criston Cole, lured her forces into a trap. Princess Rhaenys, rider of the mighty dragon Meleys, soared into battle against Aegon and his brother Aemond. The sky thundered with roars and fire as dragons collided. When the smoke cleared, Meleys was slain. Rhaenys fell with her beast, her body broken in the ashes. Aegon himself was grievously burned, his crown charred into his flesh. The war grew darker still. Aemond, called the Kinslayer, hunted with Vhagar, the oldest and most fearsome dragon alive. In vengeance for slights real and imagined, he set the Riverlands aflame, leaving villages and fields as nothing but cinders. Yet Rhaenyra's cause surged when King's Landing itself fell to her without a fight. Crowned in the Red Keep, she sat upon the Iron Throne. The dream of her father realized at last. But dreams so dearly won are often short-lived. For the city did not love her. Taxes rose, food grew scarce, and whispers filled the alleys. Then came disaster. Aelena Targaryen, Aegon's queen, threw herself from Maegor's holdfast. To the grieving small folk, Rhaenyra was to blame. Rage boiled over. One night, the mob rose. They stormed the dragon pit, where the beasts were chained. Armed with pitchforks and torches, the people of King's Landing did the unthinkable. One by one, the dragons were slain, torn down by the fury of thousands. The blood of the dragons spilled in the streets. And from that day, the Targaryen hold upon their most terrible power was broken. Rhaenyra fled the city, her forces dwindling, her cause collapsing. Betrayed and hunted, she was captured and brought before Aegon. The king who had once been her brother offered no mercy. Before the eyes of the court, Rhaenyra was fed alive to Sunfyre, Aegon's dragon. Her screams echoed across the castle, silenced only by flame. The dance had ended, but the cost was ruin. The realm lay shattered. Thousands were dead. The dragons, once the gods of sky and flame, were nearly destroyed. Only a handful remained, weak and stunted. The age of dragons was passing, and though Aegon too sat upon the Iron Throne, his reign was short. Weary, poisoned by his enemies, he died within 2 years. His successor was Rhaenyra's son, Aegon III, remembered as the Dragonbane. Upon his shoulders lay the grief of a kingdom, and the knowledge that in his time the last of the great dragons would perish. Thus ended the Age of Fire. The Targaryens still ruled, but their might was no longer divine. Where once dragons kept the great lords in awe, now only politics, marriage, and steel held the kingdom together. The realm had changed, and with it, so too would the Targaryens. The dance of the dragons had left its scars deep upon the realm. Though the Targaryens still sat the Iron Throne, they were no longer the unchallenged gods of fire they had once been. Their dragons were gone, their power diminished, their bloodline fractured by war. King Aegon III, known to history as the Dragonbane, inherited not just a kingdom but a graveyard. In his youth, he had watched his mother, Rhaenyra, devoured by dragonfire. In his reign, he witnessed the death of the last of the great dragons. Some said his grief poisoned the blood of the beasts, that his sorrow withered their fire. Others claimed it was punishment from the gods for the sins of his kin. Whatever the truth, by the end of his reign, the skies of Westeros were empty. No longer could the Targaryens command obedience with flame and wing. They were kings and queens now not by fire, but by steel, marriage, and the fragile loyalty of men. The centuries that followed brought triumphs and trials. Some kings were just, others cruel. Some reigned in glory, others drowned in folly. There was King Daenerys I, the young dragon, who led his banners into Dorne. Bold and brilliant, he conquered the desert realm at the age of 14, binding it to the crown. Yet Dorne does not break easily. Rebellion smoldered, knives struck in the dark, and within a year Daenerys lay dead, pierced by the sands he sought to master. His conquest crumbled, his dreams of unity scattered to the winds. Then came King Baelor the Blessed, pious, and gentle, who fasted until his body wasted and locked his sisters in towers for fear of sin. The faith of the Seven grew strong in his shadow, while the power of the crown weakened. The Iron Throne did not belong to gods, but to men, and men began to test it. The truest threat came not from foreign shores, but from the Targaryens themselves. For in the time of King Daenerys II, the blood of the dragon turned against itself once more. Daenerys' rule was contested by his half-brother, a son born of King Aegon IV's lust. This boy was Demon Blackfyre, a warrior as bold as he was handsome. Gifted with the sword Blackfyre, the ancestral blade of kings, he claimed his right to rule. And so began the Blackfyre rebellions. For nearly a century, pretenders bearing the name Blackfyre rose in rebellion, casting the realm into bloodshed. Some came with vast armies, others with only whispers, but all bore the shadow of legitimacy. House Targaryen fought brother against brother, kin against kin, their dynasty bleeding itself upon the battlefield again and again. Though the crown survived, each rebellion left it weaker. The lords of Westeros learned that dragons no longer soared above them. They need not bow out of fear. The Iron Throne could be challenged, and with enough swords, perhaps even taken. It was in this age that House Targaryen saw both its brightest flame and its darkest shadow. For into the world was born Prince Aerys, the son of King Jaehaerys II. Aerys was young, handsome, and filled with promise. His queen, his cousin Rhaella, bore him children, and his reign began in peace. But peace does not endure when madness takes root. Daenerys Targaryen, who will be known to history as the Mad King, fell to paranoia and cruelty. He burned his enemies alive. He raved about plots and traitors. He saw betrayal in every glance. His reign became one of terror, and his people cowered beneath his fire. And yet, while the king descended into madness, his son grew into legend. Prince Rhaegar Targaryen was everything his father was not. Tall, noble, melancholy, he was beloved by the people. He sang songs that could bring tears to the hardest men. He rode to war with valor unmatched. To the realm, he was hope itself, the promise that when Aerys passed, a true king would rise. But hope can be as dangerous as fire, for Rhaegar's heart led him astray. He was wed to Princess Elia of Dorne, yet his eyes turned to Lyanna Stark, daughter of Winterfell. Their love, or their abduction, as some would say, lit the spark that would consume a dynasty. Robert Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End and Lyanna's betrothed, raised his banners in fury. Joined by Eddard Stark, Jon Arryn, and many great houses, he declared war upon the crown. Thus began Robert's rebellion. At the Trident, beneath the beating of dragon banners, the fate of the realm was decided. Prince Rhaegar led his men into battle, clad in black armor adorned with rubies. Across the river he faced Robert Baratheon, hammer in hand, bellowing for vengeance. When the two met, the clash shook the field. But in the end, it was Robert who rose, his warhammer crushing through Rhaegar's chest. As the prince fell, the river's waters turned red, and the rubies from his armor scattered like blood across the shallows. The dream of House Targaryen died with him. King's Landing fell soon after. The Lannisters, who had sworn fealty to Aerys, betrayed him. Their armies sacked the city, spilling blood in the streets. Jaime Lannister, a boy of the Kingsguard, drove his sword into the Mad King's back, ending his reign in fire and treachery. Princess Elia of Dorne, Rhaegar's wife, and their children were slaughtered. The dragon's line was cut down, root and stem. But not all. In the chaos, Queen Rhaella and her young son Viserys fled across the narrow sea. And upon the storm-lashed rocks of Dragonstone, Rhaella bore her last child, a daughter named Daenerys. Her mother died in childbirth, leaving the girl orphaned. But she was the last sign of a house that once ruled the skies. The dragons were gone. The throne was lost. The Targaryens had fallen. Yet their story was not ended. For the blood of the dragon runs hot, and fire may sleep, but it does not die. The fall of House Targaryen seemed absolute. Their kings were dead, their castles lost, their banners torn down. The Iron Throne was no longer theirs. Robert Baratheon sat upon it, his hammer the symbol of victory over dragons. And yet across the narrow sea, a single ember smoldered. Viserys Targaryen, a boy turned exile, carried with him nothing but pride and bitterness. To him, Robert was an usurper, the Iron Throne stolen by oathbreakers and traitors. He told and retold the story of their downfall, each time sharpening it with hatred. To his young sister Daenerys, he spoke of fire and vengeance, of armies that would rise at their command, of dragons reborn. She was a girl in a foreign land, adrift among strangers, frightened of her brother's rages. Yet within her, though she did not yet know it, burned the true fire of her house. It was Viserys who sold her to Khal Drogo, the great horse lord of the Dothraki, in exchange for a promise of an army. Daenerys, a bride barely a woman, entered the world of fire and blood, not with the strength of dragons, but with fear. Yet fear can be the crucible of strength. In the endless grass seas of Essos, Daenerys was tested. She learned the ways of the Dothraki. She endured her brother's cruelty. And when at last Viserys demanded his crown of gold, it was not armies or oaths that delivered it, but justice. Khal Drogo poured molten gold upon his head, crowning him as he had wished. And Daenerys, watching, did not weep. For in that moment, She was free. Her path was only beginning. From the flames of her husband's funeral pyre, Daenerys Targaryen emerged reborn. With her came three creatures thought lost to the world: dragons. Viserion, Rhaegal, and Drogon, the first dragons in generations. The world trembled at the sight. The blood of old Valyria flowed in her veins, and fire had answered. No longer was she a frightened girl. She was the mother of dragons. Her journey across Essos was one of conquest and liberation. At Karth, the warlocks sought to chain her visions, but she defied them. In Estaper, she shattered the slavers with a single word: Dracarys. The Unsullied, once bound in chains, marched beneath her banners. In Yonkai and Meereen, she broke the masters, freeing tens of thousands, earning the name Missa-Mother. Her rule was not without trial. Governing Meereen was far harder than conquering it. Enemies struck from shadows, rebellion festered, and her young dragons grew restless and dangerous. She was torn between her duty to those she had freed and her destiny across the sea. And always, in her heart, the Iron Throne called. For Westeros was her birthright. In the west, the realm roiled. Robert Baratheon was dead. His sons, in truth bastards born of incest, clung to a throne under siege by war. The War of the Five Kings tore the land apart. And beyond the wall, darker powers stirred ancient enemies, long forgotten. When Daenerys at last sailed west, she did not come as the frightened girl who crossed the narrow sea in exile. She came as conqueror reborn, with dragons soaring above her fleets. The lords of Westeros, who once bent the knee to her ancestors, whispered her name again. She found allies in unlikely places. Jon Snow of the North, bastard of Winterfell, came to her with a warning of the dead. Together, fire and ice were joined, their fates bound by war against the White Walkers. At Winterfell, her dragons roared above the battlements, the sky lit with flame against the cold of death. On the long night, her children fought against shadows, and many fell. Yet the living endured. But even victory brings its cost. In the south, the Iron Throne still stood, held by Cersei Lannister, the last queen of House Lannister's line. To Daenerys, the throne was hers by right, the symbol of her family's legacy. Yet to the people of Westeros, she was a stranger from across the sea, her dragons weapons of terror as much as wonder. The final war was swift, brutal, and merciless. The bells of King's Landing rang surrender, yet the Dragon Queen did not stay her hand. Upon Drogon's back, she unleashed fire upon the city, burning soldiers and innocents alike. The Red Keep crumbled, and the streets ran with ash and screams. Victory had come, but so had fear. A dream of breaking the wheel, of building a world without tyranny, was consumed by the very fire she commanded. The lords of Westeros looked upon her not as savior, but as tyrant reborn. And so it was that the one who loved her most delivered the final blow. Jon Snow, with sorrow in his heart, ended her life in the throne room of her ancestors. The last dragon fell, not in battle, but in betrayal born of love. Drogon carried her body away, flying into legend. The Iron Throne itself was melted, reduced to molten steel, as if the dragon knew that no seat of power had brought anything but death, and thus ended the reign of House Targaryen. From their rise in Valyria to their conquest of Westeros, from the dance of the dragons to the Mad King's fall, from exile to fire reborn, their story is one of triumph and tragedy. The blood of the dragon forged kingdoms and shattered them, raised heroes and birthed tyrants, yet their legacy endures. In songs and in stories, in ruins and in dreams, the Targaryens live on. For fire does not die. It waits, it smolders, and in the hearts of men it is remembered. Lords and ladies, the tale of House Targaryen is a tale of power, of fire, and of blood. From the heights of conquest to the ashes of ruin, theirs is a history unlike any other. If this chronicle has stirred your heart, then take up your banner with us. Pledge your allegiance by striking the like, swearing your oath in the comments, and joining our host by subscribing. For more tales of history, both real and imagined, return here, where the past is not forgotten and fire forever burns.